I didn't even realize she was calling the cops on me at first. I was standing in my own driveway, barefoot, coffee cooling in my hand, when I saw her across the street with her phone held up like a weapon. Not recording. Calling her back was straight. Chin lifted. That same tight smile she always wore when she thought she was in control. She glanced at me once, then turned away, lowering her voice like she didn't want me to hear, but I did. Yes. I'd like to report an ongoing disturbance. Yes. Right now. He's refusing to comply. I remember thinking, comply with what? I hadn't spoken to her. I hadn't touched anything. I hadn't broken a single rule. All I'd done was park my truck in my own driveway and start unloading lumber for a weekend project. But she'd already decided I was the problem, and that phone call. That was just the beginning, because by the time the police showed up, the entire neighborhood would be watching, and everything she thought she knew about power, rules, and control was about to collapse. Let me back up. I moved into this HOA neighborhood thinking I'd found something peaceful. Quiet streets, trimmed lawns, families walking dogs in the evenings. I'm not a troublemaker. I work long hours, keep to myself, and spend my weekends fixing things around the house. That's it. She was the HOA board president. Everyone knew her. She made sure of that clipboard always in hand. HOA logo jacket zipped up even in warm weather. She spoke in rules, not sentences. The first time she talked to me, it was about my trash cans being visible for 20 minutes too long. The second time, it was about my grass being a half-inch over regulation. The third time, she knocked on my door at 7:30 in the morning because my garage door had been open overnight. Each time, she smiled like she was doing me a favor. I stayed polite. I nodded. I fixed whatever she complained about. I figured if I didn't give her attention, she'd move on. She didn't. The real issue wasn't the rules. It was that I didn't bow. I didn't apologize for existing. I didn't act scared of her clipboard. That's when she escalated. The morning everything went sideways. I was unloading lumber from my truck. The boards were stacked neatly. No blocking sidewalks. No noise. No mess. She marched across the street like she'd been waiting for this moment. "You can't do that," she said. "Do what?" I asked. "Construction materials in view of the street," she snapped. "That's a violation." I told her calmly that I was doing a small project inside my garage. No permits required, temporary materials, and that I'd be done by noon. She stared at me like I'd insulted her. "I'm giving you a direct order," she said. That's when I laughed. Not loudly. Just a small, surprised laugh. "I don't take orders from you," I said. "This is my property." Her face changed instantly. That smile vanished, replaced by something sharp and angry. She stepped back, pulled out her phone, and said, "Then I'm calling the police." I honestly thought she was bluffing. She'd opened within minutes. Neighbors started coming outside. People pretending to water plants. Someone sat on their porch like this was entertainment. She stood at the edge of my driveway narrating everything into her phone. "He's aggressive," she said, refusing to comply. I feel unsafe. I hadn't moved. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't even stepped toward her. But once those words were spoken, they hung in the air like smoke. That's when I felt it, the shift. The moment where this stopped being annoying and became dangerous, I went inside, grabbed my phone, and started recording. Not her. Me. My driveway. The lumber. The calm. Because something told me I was going to need proof. 10 minutes later, the sound of sirens rolled through the TN neighborhood. 2 police cars pulled up. She straightened like she'd won as the officers stepped out. She rushed toward them, talking fast, pointing at me. Pointing at the lumber, pointing at my house like it was evidence of a crime scene. I stayed where I was. Hands visible. Phone recording. One officer approached me while the other listened to her. "Sir," the officer said calmly, "can you tell me what's going on?" Before I could answer, she cut in. "He's been harassing me for weeks," she said. "Refusing HOA rules? Intimidating behavior." I felt threatened. The officer turned to me again. I took a breath. I'm unloading lumber for a home project, I said. I'm on my own property. I haven't touched her. I haven't threatened her. I have everything recorded. I held up my phone. That's when the second officer walked over. Ma'am, he said, what specific law do you believe he's breaking? She hesitated. HOA regulations, she said quickly. The officer blinked. HOA rules aren't criminal law, he said. They're civil matters. Her face tightened. But he refused to comply, she said. The officer looked between us, then down at the lumber. Is there any violence? Any threats? He asked. No, I said. She opened her mouth. No, she admitted. That's when the officer sighed. Then, calling 911 wasn't appropriate. He said I could see it on her face. Realization that this wasn't going the way she planned, but she wasn't done yet, because, right then, she said the one thing that would change everything. Well, she snapped, if he won't follow the rules, maybe he shouldn't live here. The officer's expression hardened, and that's when I knew. This was about to backfire in a way she'd never expected, asterisk the moment she said that. The air shifted, not just between us, but around us. Neighbors, who had been watching quietly, started paying closer attention. One of them actually stopped pretending to check their mail. The officer looked directly at her. Ma'am, said slowly, that's not your decision. She scoffed. I'm the HOA president. That doesn't give you authority over residency or law enforcement, he replied. I stayed quiet. I let her talk, because people like her always tell on themselves if you give them enough rope. She crossed her arms. He's been a problem since he moved in, the officer asked. In what way? She hesitated again. Well, he questions things. He doesn't cooperate, officer nodded. That's not a crime. She raised her voice. So what am I supposed to do? Just let him break rules. The officer said something I'll never forget. You're supposed to handle HOA issues through civil channels, not emergency services? Her face flushed. That's when the second officer asked her for ID. She froze. Why? Because misusing emergency services is a serious matter, he said. Suddenly, she wasn't smiling anymore. She fumbled through her purse, hands shaking just slightly, while he checked her information. The first officer turned to me. Sir, he said quietly, you did the right thing by recording. I nodded. I also have copies of HOA emails, I said. Threatening fines, harassment. His eyebrows lifted. Would you be willing to forward those? Yes, I said. Behind us, she was arguing with the other officer. I had every right to call, she said. He was being defiant. The officer shook his head. Defiance isn't illegal. Then came the moment that sealed it. A neighbor stepped forward, actually two of them. One said, she does this a lot. The other nodded. Calls the cops on people she doesn't like. The officer turned back to her. Is that true? She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. That silence spoke louder than anything. The officer took a breath. Ma'am, you're receiving a formal warning for misuse of emergency services. Her eyes widened. A warning? She snapped. For doing my job? This isn't your job, he said firmly. Then he added, if this happens again, there will be consequences. I could see her unraveling. The power she thought she had gone, the audience she expected turned against her as the officers wrapped up. One of them turned to me again. You're free to continue your project, he said. If the HOA contacts you again inappropriately, document everything. I thanked him as they walked away. She stood there frozen, no clipboard, no authority. Just a woman who'd pushed too far. That should have been the end, but karma wasn't done. 2 weeks later, I got a letter, not a fine. A notice, an emergency HOA meeting, turns out. Multiple neighbors filed complaints after witnessing the incident. Emails, videos, statements. She'd made enemies quietly for years. This was just the moment they needed. At the meeting, she tried to control the room like always, but people spoke up about harassment, about threats, about fear, when the vote was called. She lost her position by a landslide. She walked out without looking at anyone. I never heard from her again. The HOA stopped bothering me entirely, and every time I unload lumber now, neighbors wave, because sometimes justice doesn't come from fighting harder. Sometimes it comes from standing your ground and letting people reveal exactly who they are.